Welcome to the National Women's Fitness Academy podcast. We're here to talk about women's health, female hormones, body image, and all things health and fitness.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Women's Fitness Academy podcast. I am your host, Ellen, and I am an educator for Women's Fitness Academy, as well as a binge and body image coach. And today I am actually recording from Bali, and I'm here with a very, very special guest. I don't even know if we've had any males on the podcast before, so this might even be like a first. Definitely a first for me for interviewing. I'm here with Tyson the Trainer, aka Serial King. And he is a nutritionist and personal trainer. And yeah, he has a very interesting story in regards to eating disorders that he himself has struggled with. And yeah, I'm just like super excited to have him on. So Tyson, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks so much for having me and being the first man on the podcast. I feel very honored. So thank you for that.
Yeah, it's such a privilege. So for those who don't follow you, if you would just describe yourself, like what would you say?
Well, I guess I'm someone who's, obviously very passionate about the nutrition side of things in fitness. Like I did start off just as a personal trainer, but I'm very, just really focused on nutrition and helping people understand how simple it can be and why also, you need to learn how it's not a black and white mentality when it comes to nutrition. So teaching people that, you can kind of have your cake and eat it too. And just learn how to integrate, a better, healthier lifestyle as opposed to, thinking you have to restrict certain things or be very rigid with your nutrition.
Yeah, definitely. And like, I feel like I found your page, I can't remember how, but I started following you because you were very like, there's no bullshit here. This is just the facts. This is like what the evidence say. And you are very into like flexible dieting and just like telling people how it is. So I think that's something that people really appreciate. But how long have you been running your business now?
What are we, 2022? So 8 years now of being PT, and probably about, I think, 6 years of doing nutrition. So a while now. And it's just been like, over time, my thought process has changed. I've grown over time to the way that I teach people, because at the very start, when I wasn't as educated with nutrition, I can even admit like the way that I used to teach people with certain things was not the healthiest way because of how my relationship with food was, So through my own education and getting qualified, it has helped me educate in the correct way, and also helped me with myself and overcome my disordered eating.
Yeah, and I think that's something, I mean, we're always learning and growing, right? And I think there's a lot of, like when we start off, like you don't know what you don't know. You have the best intention at heart and you're just trying to help people. And then like now looking back, you're like, oh, that probably wasn't the best advice that I gave that person. But you're always learning as you go. So how did you get into fitness? Were you always really active and sporty as a kid, or like what was it like growing up?
Oh man, I was not sporty or active as all as a kid.
Really?
Like I tried to play sports and like I was never good. Like my mum tried to get me active and play football, and I was never really good at it. So I didn't really do much fitness wise. And then I just started going to the gym. Typical, teenage boy wanted to go to the gym to get girls. That was actually why I started going to the gym. And then I just kind of fell into it as like a secondary interest. And I was always spending my spare time researching, exercises and stuff like that. And then naturally, like, I was like, oh, maybe I'll study this and I'll see how I go. So I kind of fell into it. And then that was when I was living up in Queensland and I got my personal training certificate. And then when I moved to Sydney, I just tried to find a job and I got into the personal training side of things. And it just happened to click. Hey, I loved working with people. I loved, because I'm very extroverted. So it just seemed to fit me quite well. And then I always, again, like because I became so interested in it, it didn't feel like it was a job for me, because there's always, whenever I had my spare time, it was learning about fitness. So yeah, I just kind of fell into it.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. Not so much going to the gym to get girls, but definitely like definitely that it's so something that you're so passionate about that it literally doesn't feel like a job, or when you're reading about it or listening to podcasts or whatever it is, it's just so fun because it's something that you just love.
Yeah.
And I think that really comes across on your page as well, that you're always, showing up, you're always talking about it, you're always like reposting like what your clients are doing and stuff like that. And it does really come across like quite genuine, where I think there's a lot of people who just like kind of copycatting and not really have the best interest at heart sometimes. But yeah, no, I definitely think that your page is one of the good ones, and it's one of spreading positive vibes and also a lot of good just knowledge around nutrition.
Thanks. I mean, I love teaching. For me, I find it so fun because, especially like even when they're not my clients, when people give me feedback and they're like, oh, I heard this and this helped me, and I'm like, this is why I love it so much, because the more people I can help, like just the better overall. Because I think the way that nutrition or just like fitness is kind of portrayed from a lot of fit influencers and type of things, it's portrayed the wrong way. There are these extremes, there are these all or nothing mentalities. There's making people feel guilty for living normal lives, and I want to help people build better relations with food, because I think it's plays such a big part in our life, and it's something you're going to be having 3-4 times a day, so you want to be in a good place with it.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that like people who have struggled with this in the past, they can have so much more compassion and understanding for people who do struggle with these things. And it is so common. But I really wanted to talk to you about this because I've talked to a lot of girls with eating disorders, and I think that it's very not normal, but it's something that a lot of girls do come across. And with guys, it's kind of a bit more like swept under the rug kind of, and it's almost like if a guy goes to the gym and it's really strict with their food and cuts all these things out, it's like, oh, you're just very dedicated. Well, that could just as well be an eating disorder as if a girl was doing it. People would be like, oh, that's like you need to, but that's not balanced. So you struggled with this as younger, didn't you? How old were you when you were struggling with this?
I think it did start when I actually started getting into the fitness side of things. I had a guy at a supplement store, give me a specific meal plan that I had to only, the very basic broccoli, chicken, veggies. And because I lost weight doing that, I thought I had to kind of stick to that side of things, And then I had this sense of restriction where I couldn't have these foods because they were bad. And then I'd end up binging on those foods. And then I got into really bad, uncontrolled eating behaviors. So it started off early, but then I kind of fell into denial about it. Like, my friends and family would actually comment on things about it. And I would just be like, no, like, I'm dedicated. I'm just trying to stick to this. Yeah. Where at the end of the day, like I actually, was struggling a lot. And that was something that I probably struggled with for about 3 or 4 years. And it was just different a long time. And because it went from first, it was, the eating clean and healthy food only. And then I learned about flexible dieting. But when I learned about flexible dieting, I wasn't flexible. I was very neurotic, eating exactly this amount of food. And if I'd weigh out my rice, it would be 90 grams. It wouldn't be 92 grams, I couldn't have that 2 extra grams. And if I didn't hit my macros or anything like that, it would cause me to become anxious and then I'd overeat. So I just had this really bad cycle that was happening for a long time. Because of all this rigidity I was creating in my life around food and food rules that I created for myself.
Definitely. I think like that's something that I see so much. And I think that's a bit, when flexible dieting came out, it was kind of promoted as this like flexible dieting way of like, now you don't have to have any restrictions, but people are still doing it, but they're still so strict with the macros. It's like you have to have exactly 152 grams of carbs and exactly 62 grams of fat or whatever it is. And if you go to 63 grams, then you failed because you didn't hit your macros today. So it's promoted for a lot of people as it's flexible because they had a donut, but it's still like they still, adding in like a half a tablespoon of olive oil to hit the fat target. That's not really flexible. So I think that for us as coaches, we see a lot of the kind of backlash now of the whole flexible dieting when it grew. Then now people are kind of realizing that it is basically just like not an eating disorder, but a very unhealthy way of eating when you are getting that obsessed with it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where it's a very fine line because, when people say it's flexible dieting, it's like, well, what do you mean by flexible? Because eating within a specific amount of macronutrients that you have to hit, right? And then it ends up your dinner being like a concoction of like one egg and like, this amount of, and like, it's not even a meal. It's like, well, it's not really flexible dieting because you're still within restraint. Whereas like, flexible dieting to me now is like, we have a calorie target, we have a protein target, but the rest of it is really up to you. And, when we create less food rules for people, surprise, surprise, they're more adherent. They have less stress around food.
Yeah, 100%. And I think I've listened to a lot of your podcast episodes as well, and I know that like we coach in a very similar way in that aspect. And like, to be honest, like when I first started, I was very strict with like the macro, the fats and the carbs and the protein and stuff. But as we've grown as coaches, we don't really do that anymore. But for you, when you were in this kind of phase where you were so strict with all your foods and your training and stuff, how did you get out of that?
Well, I wish back then that I did go and see someone for it, because I think they would have really helped me. But again, because I was kind of in like a denial side of things for it, like I could get myself out of it, and I was very, I guess, a proud person. It was a lot through education, like learning, again, still like about the flexible dieting side of things, but slowly removing food rules for myself and letting myself have, quote unquote, higher calorie food, or not worrying so much about macros. And I kind of had to teach myself by showing myself when I would not stick to a specific macro plan or macro calories, that my body composition wouldn't change, or I wouldn't gain body fat. So I actually had to slowly teach myself to come out of that by having less food rules over time, and then realizing, I actually still look the same whether or not I eat this amount of fats or this amount of carbs. So it was just kind of a self journey that I went on to teach myself to get out of it. But it was still very like, doing it on your own is a big struggle, and that's why I'm glad there are coaches like yourself and other people who are available there now, because when you do this yourself, like, you don't know if you're on the right track. You're always second guessing yourself. You don't know if what you're following to help you get around this issue is actually going to help you. But yeah, it was just a lot of trial and error, and also just learning to trust that it's okay, and accept that at the end of the day, no one really cares about your physique like you do, because I was very physique obsessed. Like, I don't want to gain fat. I want to be lean. So body composition focused, where when I allowed myself to kind of be okay with gaining weight, and I did gain a bit of weight, no one cared. No one judged me because I didn't lose clients, especially being a PT. Like, I had to be okay that if I gained weight, nothing was going to happen. And it wasn't until I was able to gain that weight and had that freedom where I realized nothing happened. There was nothing different in my life, except now I had a better relationship with food.
Yeah, for sure. Did you ever talk to your friends or your girlfriend or anything about anyone about this?
Not really, because when I was struggling this, I moved to Sydney and I didn't really have friends because I didn't know anyone. And everyone was in university, and I wasn't going to university, and because I didn't drink, because I was so strict, I didn't really have a social group around me. I was quite lonely when I moved here. And so I didn't really have anyone to talk to about it. And all I used to listen to was the bodybuilding podcasts and be on the forums, and all these people seemed to be like, they could do it. And I was like, why can't I do it? So it was actually tough, because who I was comparing myself to were people who looked like they were sticking to these things, but I actually had no idea. It was just what I was perceiving in my head.
Yeah. And I think it's really interesting that it's becoming a lot more common amongst guys now. Although I feel like it probably has always been this common. It's just now it's getting spoken about a bit more. So they did a really interesting study on this in Norway, actually, at a school, a university there. And they realized that it was just as many guys as girls who had eating disorders, based on just a questionnaire, filling out, how are you feeling about yourself? How, what are you eating? How strict are you? All these questions. And they're not even aware that it was something wrong.
Wow.
It was just dedication, basically. They just thought that they were just training and tracking and doing whatever they thought that was right. But it is a disordered behavior. And when you are letting something control your life that much, being controlled with food, with training, it's not healthy anymore.
Yeah, again, and like that's like my big thing now is, health and fitness is a part of your lifestyle. It shouldn't control your lifestyle. And that's a big differentiator because when you are like giving up social, going out with people, and again, there are time and places where sometimes you have to say no, but if you find that you're not going out and socializing anymore because you're scared to eat out, or if you can't track something, you're scared, like that's when it's becoming consuming of your life. And you need to be aware of this because, unfortunately, with Instagram and how it is a picture platform at the end of the day, and the people with the best physiques just happen to be bodybuilders who are neurotic, who like to track, who like all those things. It's now put onto the normal people, and we think we also have to do those things when that's not a lifestyle. That's for specific people who are trying to get on stage or trying to get super lean, but we cannot use that same approach for ourselves who just want to live a normal life and just want to look a little bit better. Like we're not trying to achieve ridiculously lean like these people. We're just trying to feel good about ourselves, eat better, and just, be overall healthier.
Yeah, 100%. I totally agree with that. And like, we're not gonna, like, most of us are not gonna step on stage anytime soon or be on the cover of like Men's Health or something like that. So why, like, we're all doing this at the end of the day to feel a bit better. And if feeling a bit better means that you're going to go out for a burger with your friends or have a cocktail on the weekend or something, why shouldn't you do it?
Yeah, 100%. And it's like, why would you want to give up your social health, which is so important because, we know how COVID went. A lot of people suffered with their mental health because they didn't have that social component.
Mm.
You're giving up that social component if you're focusing everything on this health and fitness aspect. And that's not health and fitness at the end of the day. That's obsession.
Yeah, 100%. So when you working with clients who are going through all of these things, like what are some of the warning signs that you look out for?
Restriction methods 100% first. So like, have they been trying to diet before? How many times have they tried to diet? What is their adherence like at the moment? Because most people come to me, they say, I want to lose weight. I've been trying. Most people have been trying for 6 months plus, and they say, I haven't been able to stick to it. And it always comes down to usually too much restriction or trying to diet for too long. So they're big red flags. I always do ask if they have been screened or anything for an eating disorder, have they ever struggled with that before? And also like what the exercise is like too, because a lot of people, it may not be the eating side of things, they may be over exercising to compensate for that eating, So there's a lot of behaviors out there that are easy to look for, but also when I work with a client who may not have come up with, any like nothing that looks like they are having any issues. When I have a look at how their days are and things like that, there are some red flags like restricting during the day and only eating their calories at night, or if they overeat one day, trying to compensate on the other day. So there are a few things that I do try and look out for the most part.
Yeah, for sure. I think that like when I first started doing flexible diet and the whole calorie banking or calorie like carb cycling in general was so common back then. And I just found that it led just to people just, like you said, like just overeating on the weekends, or they would not eat all day and then they would have like this massive binge at night because they were so freaking starving. So it's nice that there's like coaches out there who don't promote this, because I still to this day see it all the time, and people will like message or like say, this is my calories on my training days or non-training days, and all this stuff. And people just make it a little bit too complicated.
Yeah, 100%. And that's where it's also like, this is the disassociation between coaches and normal people, because like we're trying to teach people how to make this as easy as possible. Having higher calorie days and lower calorie days and carb days and non-carb, like that's just way too much. Like, I don't know about you, like you and I, we're coaches. Like this is our job. Even I don't have time to do that type of shit, to meal prep and all that stuff. And I'm like, I've got clients who are mums or who work like, 10, 12 hours a day. Yeah. They're not going to have this time to, all right, Tuesdays and Thursdays are these carb days. And I'm like, oh my God, that's just too much.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. So you mentioned before that you were coaching more like calories and protein. So do you ever get clients who feel like, what am I going to do with the rest of the calories? Because I can imagine there's a lot of listeners who are like, I track protein, carbs, and fats. And like, if I don't know my carbs and my fat, like, what the hell am I going to eat? Like, how do you work with clients who have that kind of issue?
So even though I said like calories and protein, there's still daily habits that I teach people how to eat, because basically I want to show people how I call it eating like an adult, right? So, what a day of eating should look like that is just health promoting. That doesn't mean that you're going to lose weight. It doesn't mean that, like it's going to help you get shredded. It's honestly for getting everything you need to have a healthy, balanced diet. So I give them a calorie and a protein goal, and then I'm like, all right, so we're going to aim for 3 to 5 servings of veggies a day. We're going to aim for 1 to 3 servings of fruit that I give people. We have whole grains and calcium if they're not lactose intolerant. And they're basically like some criteria that I go off for the most part, because when people start to eat real meals and they put meals together, like, you're going to have your protein and your veggies, but what else would you usually choose? You'd choose some, maybe some rice or some potatoes. So you're actually eating real food. You're not, this meal, I'm going to have like 60 grams of protein, 20 grams of carbs. Like, it doesn't fucking matter what you're going to have, whether it's this amount of carbs or this amount of fats. It's more about showing them how to put together a meal that's like, this is going to help you tick off all of your micronutrients. Because that was another issue with flexible dieting. Yeah, you can have protein, carbs, and fats, but it's like, okay, so how many veggies do you get a day? Oh, who cares about veggies? It's just about if it fits your macros. Like, it's like, okay, for fuck's sake. Like, we need help. Like, again, putting the health back in health and fitness is what I'm trying to do. Because I think, again, like, people underestimate how important micronutrients are, and like, it's funny because when people start to eat better, and again, this is not about bad food or good food, but when you eat well, what do? You feel good. You go to the bathroom regularly. You sleep better. You have more energy. And that's because you are getting your micronutrients in too, which is just important as your macronutrients.
Yeah, literally. And if your diet just consists of all those processed food, like, your body's still going to be nutrient deprived. You're still going to be super hungry.
Yeah.
So,
geez, God forbid the bathroom. When I see people with very low fiber, I'm like, oh my God, my insides would be crying right now.
Yeah, definitely. It's sad that all of this, like, what I eat in a day, and it's just all this like sugar-free maple syrup and like one strawberry. I think that's after following you, because you commented on someone's, I'm not going to name any names here, but she put up like a Instagram what I eat in a day, and it was literally oats with one strawberry. Like, the snack was a protein bar and an iced latte, and then it was all this weird like processed stuff. And I remember you commented, and I was like, wow, that's good.
It was one strawberry cut in half, remember, to make it look like it was. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Yeah. And this is the thing, like, these are fit influencers showing what I eat in a day. And it's like, you don't even eat your fruits and veggies,
Yeah.
And I just keep like, people forget, like, it's health and fitness, which is like, the health component is so important, because without your health, you've got nothing,
Yeah, no, 100% agree. And it's just, I think it's that's what I do love flexible dieting if you do it the right way. But I think that it's a very, like, I don't want to say wrong way, because everyone's different, but this is not the way that I would want to eat. And I feel that people who eat like that, you're going to be starving if you eat like oats with one strawberry. I don't think that's going to be very filling. Wait, I think you cut out a bit. Oh.
Yeah. And it's funny because, like, when we think,
no, you're back.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
It's funny because, like, when we like, I know you said there's obviously no right or wrong way, and I do agree with you, but I always just say, like, I say to my clients, if you've ticked off your habits, if you've got enough fruits and enough veggies, which usually will enable enough fiber, you've got enough protein, and people are like, oh, but I've still got all these, like, I've still got 200 calories left. What can I have? Well, that's where the flexibleness comes in, of you can have whatever you want, you know?
Yep.
And that's where it's disassociating from good versus bad food, but you have to earn your good food, I mean, your snacky, your enjoyable food. Like, like, what did your parents used to say? Eat what's on your plate, eat for dinner, and you get dessert. Same thing. Eat the good food, you get dessert.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree. So when you were, like, obviously you did struggle for like quite a while, like 3-4 years. That's a long time of struggling with eating disorder or disordered eating behaviors. Do you still get those thoughts coming back?
Yeah, 100%. And that's just this may just be something personal for me, but I say to people who struggle with it, you never overcome it completely, because it depends on how long you suffer with it for, but it kind of becomes a part of an old identity, right? So for me, like there are still times where it's very, very, I'd say once every quarter, once every 6 months. For some whatever reason, I may have not eaten as much during the day, and then I'll just come home one night and just be starving and eat and eat. But it's not the uncontrolled eating where I lose that disassociation from myself, or I feel like you ever have you have an episode where you're like, oh, like you kind of come back and you're like, whoa, what was that about? Like it's never that point, but I find myself falling into like behaviors like that. But because I am aware of it, I'm able to stop myself before it becomes uncontrolled. And again, like it's very rare and few and far in between, like maybe twice a year, whereas it used to be a regular occurrence. And when it happens, it's not like, oh man, I've relapsed, I've fallen into a binge or anything. It's kind of just like, oh, well, I overate today. It is what it is. And then I get back on with my life. Because when we we try and do is we don't give that behavior any attention, because the more we ruminate on it, the more we think about it, the more we beat ourselves up or whatever it is, we're going to keep going back to that time where it's like you just move on with life and you don't give it that attention and you just keep going on with whatever happens,
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. And like your body remembers feelings, right? It doesn't remember words and like things that you see. It remembers things because you attach a feeling towards it. And if you feel guilty about something, then it's more likely to happen again because that's what your body remembers.
Exactly. And we can think, oh, I'm going to outlogic this, I'm going to outthink this. It doesn't matter what we think, it does come back to that subconscious feeling brain.
Yeah, 100%. And it's just like for anyone listening to this who is struggling with disordered eating, binge eating, whatever, like orthorexia, there's so many different things, and just being obsessed with your food and your training, like just know that this is not something that you're just going to wake up tomorrow and feel like, oh no, I can eat whatever I want now, I don't feel guilty. Like if you struggle with this for 3-4 years, it's probably going to take like a long time to get rid of those habits as well, and those kind of thoughts, and being able to kind of understand this is just a thought that I don't have to act on, or this is the actual true thought that is what I actually stand for.
Yeah. And it's funny because when I work with clients and, they're struggling, I say to them, look, this is not going to be something that we're going to fix immediately. And you will have times where you do fall back into these habits, but it's more about the more you are making an effort to make better choices overall and work on these behaviors, it will happen less and less frequently. It doesn't go from happening all the time to nothing. It may go from happening, 5 times a week to 2 times a week to once a week to once a fortnight. It is a process, because again, like these habits that happen, like, this overeating, it becomes a part of our identity, and it becomes in a way a habit. It's very hard just to be like, oh, I'm not going to do this anymore. Like I'm done with binge eating. Yet that's what we do. We wake up, all right, it's Monday. I'm so done. Like, the amount of times I remember I used to look in the mirror and be like, I'm not going to binge eat anymore. That's it. I'm over it. And then what would happen? It would happen again, because again, you can't just decide that it's done and that's it. Like it doesn't happen like that.
No, God. If it was that easy, we would not have any issues.
Yeah, exactly. If only it was that easy. Yeah.
Oh, I wish. But yeah, it's definitely a long process. Do you work with a lot of girls who have these kind of issues?
Yeah, for the most part. I do work predominantly with females, and a majority of them who do come to me do present some type of behaviors. I wouldn't always say it's disordered eating. A lot of it is like binge restricting issues, as in restricting during the day. So my biggest thing is to get people eating regularly first. It sounds so yeah, exactly, and it sounds so counterintuitive, because when you save calories for the evening and then you overeat at night, you don't want to do that again the next day. So you're like, oh, I'm scared I'm going to overeat, and they restrict again. But they don't want to eat during the day, because now they're scared, if I eat during the day and then I binge, I'm going to have even more calories. But funnily enough, the reason you're overeating at night is because you are restricting during the day. And if you start to eat a breakfast, a lunch, a dinner, people get very surprised. They're like, oh, I'm actually so full by the end of the day, I don't have that urge to overeat anymore. Like that's a very simple thing that I do with a lot of my clients. and helps them just prevent that overeating at nighttime. Does it fix everyone? No, but it is a big issue that I see with people who restrict during the day and eat very little calories.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, most of the girls that I work with who struggle with binge eating, it's just because they've been dieting for so long and their body are literally just, it's so nutrient deprived, it's so starving because it hasn't had, it's been dieting on 800 or 1,000 calories or 1,200 calories for so long now. And it's so sad that it's still like this.
Yeah. And that's the thing, like, you know, you and I, we obviously get, like, when people first come on my coaching, I get them to eat at their maintenance calories, you know, and it's always the same talk. All right, we're going to get you on this. And they're like, oh, that sounds like a lot of food. And I'm like, yeah, like, it's always like, it's the same thing that I have with every client. Like, oh, that sounds like so much food. I don't know. And I'm like, well, just trust me. Let's see how we go. And like, you know, people don't gain weight. I'm like, hey, my job is to help you, not to hurt you, obviously. So, and just people realizing how much they can actually eat, especially females. They don't have to starve on 1,200 calories or 1,000 calories, and they can actually eat quite a lot of food and maintain a good weight, you know?
Yeah, 100%. And also, it's going to feel like a lot of food when you're eating whole foods, when you're eating actual foods that are nutritious, when you're not eating like half of your day doesn't consist of Dunkin' Donuts and cookies and, you know, stuff like processed food, because this tiny little cookie it's not going to fill you up at all, but it could definitely contain like 300-400 calories versus 300-400 calories of chicken and sweet potato and rice. That's going to be a hell of a lot of food.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Like, again, it comes back to just like having plants, having protein, having like these good sources of foods and nutrients. Like, they're quite filling, and people go, oh man, I can't eat this much, I'm so full. I'm like, yeah, because you're eating real food. And again, like we said, there's no, you know, we're not talking about you cut out everything, but when you make a majority of your diet nutritious, full of whole foods, surprise, surprise, you're not hungry anymore.
Yeah, no, 100%. Did you, because I know when I recovered, I was more, especially when I was anorexic, I think it was very hard for me to feel full. Like, that was a big trigger for me that, okay, now I need to like exercise more or starve myself tomorrow, because I hated the feeling of feeling full. Like, was there anything in particular like that you struggled with when you were recovering?
See, I was the actual opposite. I like would suck myself to that feeling of fullness, right? So like for me, it was the anxious feeling of not being full and stuffed. And I think because I tried to, you know, use as much clean, healthy foods as I could to get as full as I can, when I didn't have that stretched stomach feeling. Like, basically there'd be days I'd lay down and I'm like, I couldn't, like, I'd be in so much pain, you know, because I ate so much food. That trying to train myself to actually be okay not being full was a challenge for myself, right? So it was kind of the opposite to you, I guess, and being okay that I wasn't stuffed, and then going from being okay that I wasn't full to feeling about 90 to 80% fullness after a meal versus looking to be stuffed to the brim. So that was something that I had to slowly allow myself to feel okay with, because I don't know why, but I needed that feeling of being stuffed to the brim to feel like I was full. So I lost hunger cues for myself, and I couldn't really have that interpretation because I was always just used to being, you know, as stuffed as I could be. So that was what my challenge was, to actually slowly allow myself to be okay with not eating as much food.
God, it must have been so difficult to do this like completely on your own as well, not having any kind of support network around. Do you feel like it was very fueled by like the gym and like looking at other people? And how did you
100%. Yeah, it was definitely fueled by that. I think it was because being a PT, you know, you had to be lean, you had to be fit, you know, and funnily enough, I look back now and like I was like, even back then I was 30 kilos lighter than I am now, and I was like, I used to 30, yeah. So I used to be cool. So I was like 60, what was I, 67 kilos or something, right? And like, yeah, right. Yeah. And like I thought back then I was fat, you know, like I still had this like, I need to get leaner, or like, and it was just this ongoing thing in my head, because I was comparing myself to trainers online. I was comparing myself that I had to be a PT and I had to be lean and ripped. and I kept thinking I was overweight. And I looked at myself and I'm like, what was I thinking? And I think, unfortunately back then, it was just that it was social media having that negative impact on me because I didn't realize, and I thought I had to look a certain way in order to attract clients and to be successful. And so that's why it was also really hard for me to accept when I was gaining weight that would this ruin my career? Would people not like me? And it was all just things I made up in my head, like anxiety is things we make up that haven't even happened. We just make these things up.
Yeah, totally. Do you see a lot of this like in males do you train males at all?
Yeah, I train a fair few males. Like predominantly, I'd say like 80-20, 80% female.
Yeah. Do you see this a lot in guys?
Just sort of behavior. The males that I work with, not so much. They're very like a lot of the guys that come to me are more, I would guess you would say, they're kind of just getting into the gym or they've lost their motivation. They're kind of coming back into it. So I haven't really worked with a lot of guys who have been very dedicated into the gym. I don't tend to attract those type of males. So me personally, no. But like, it's definitely, again, like it's becoming more of a normalized thing. But I also think the reason it's not talked about or normalized as much because males can get away with things more just because we're males, like with females, they're being brought up through like the diet culture basically, and you have to look this certain way in magazines and all this shit. With males, like you could be, a little bit heavier, you could be a little bit lighter. Like I think with that and like, or say, oh yeah, I'm bulking, that's it is what it is. So like it wasn't, people, it's easily swept away compared to females,
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. And I think that like for me at the moment, I'm quite happy with how I look. Like I'm not trying to lose weight. I'm not trying to gain weight. And every time I say that to someone, like they're like, huh? Like they don't get it because it's so common and almost like normalized that as a female, you should always try and want to lose weight. You should always try and get leaner. And it's just sad that it's gonna be like that. It is a bit different like that. And like now when I'm back at a CrossFit gym here in Canggu, and like everyone just takes all the guys always like takes their shirts off, and like they're not all ripped, but they still taking their shirt off, and no one even cares. But then when the girls do it, like they just feel so uncomfortable in themselves that they don't want to take their shirt off. And it's like, why can't you're probably leaner than all these guys? Like just own it,
Yeah, and it's very tough. And it's actually funny though. I have just my anecdotal opinion. The guys who are very lean or extremely lean are the ones who are obsessed about their body the most. And like when they take their shirt off, they're thinking, are other people watching me? Can you see my abs? Blah, blah. Whereas like other guys, like, like if you walk down the beach, you see older guys in their 40s, they got guts, they don't give a shit. They got their shirt off, they don't care. Yeah. And like, that is actually amazing. Like you want to be that person, 100%. You don't give a fuck. Like, obviously, like, you want to take care of your health, but who gives a shit about like the body fat thing too? Yeah. Who gives a shit if you're 21% body fat or you're 18? No one cares, you know? No one cares. If someone comes up to me, they're like, hey, what's your body fat? Oh, 7%. Oh my God, only 7%. Like, fuck, like no one cares.
No one cares. Yeah. It is just a number. And I was just talking about this on another podcast that for females, we get so obsessed with having to be a certain size, and I don't know about you, but like I always used to keep this like one pair of jeans that fitted me when I was like at my skinniest, and in the back of my head I was always like, one day I'm going to be back there. And then just like a few years ago I was like, what the hell do I still have these jeans? Like they literally fit me when I was my sickest. Fucking just get rid of them.
Yeah. And it's funny, again, it comes back to, a very common thing is females in the scale weight, right? And then whenever I talk to a female and I said, okay, if your scale weight didn't move, but you fit into, clothes that you liked, or, you noticed that your body changed, would you be happy? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, so it's not a scale number that you're after at all. It's, the way you want to look, which is, if you want to change your body composition, you can go about that without giving a shit about the scale, but they have like, that I just want to fucking throw that thing in the bin, the amount of people that get so stuck on it. And it's like, that does not define who you are as a person. It does not define the value you give in the world or anything like that. But people get so caught up in that number. And it's like, this is not your self-worth, This is just a piece of fucking material that you're standing on at the end of the day. And if you woke up and you looked in the mirror and you're like, I like how I feel, I have energy, you know, I feel very confident about myself. And then you went and stood on the scale and you let that thing determine that you can no longer be happy because that number told you a number that you're not happy with, then it's like you're letting something else control your life. When it's like you were happy 30 seconds ago, but you're letting that one thing control you. And if that's the issue, get rid of the scale, you know?
Yeah, 100%. I remember you did was it a reel or maybe it was some story or something?
Just stories, yeah, making fun of the scale, yeah.
Up. Even today, I think you posted something about how other ways to measure progress has nothing to do with like your measurements or your scale weight. And it is so true. And I think it's so important that we do bring this out there, because there are far too many both coaches and clients who are focusing way too much on that particular number. And it's going to go up and down all the freaking time, especially as a female with all those hormones cycling around. Like, God, around my period, I probably gained like 2 kilos every single time, and it's fine.
And that's normal, right? And like females,
normal.
like clients will say to me, "Oh, you know, it's my period week, that bloody scale's up," and I'm like, obviously, like you know it's going to be up. Like, what do you expect?
It's a good thing. Your body's working.
yeah. And it's funny because again, like, you know, ways to measure progress. Like for me, because I'm trying to get someone, people come to me for, let's say, weight loss or to get fitter, but it's like what I'm trying to teach them is like progress is, or, you know, being healthier is the outcome. You know, if you're more active than you ever have been, if you're eating more plants than you ever have been, you know, if you're sleeping better, if you can run for the bus and you're not out of breath anymore, like all these things people need to realize that is what progress is. We're not using a number on the scale to define whether you are making progress or not for your health and fitness.
Yeah, 100%. And I feel like this goes like hand in hand with the flexible dieting, the way that we kind of would like to look at it, that, well, if you want to be a social person, if you want to hang out with your friends, is it going to make you happier to stay at home and eat your freaking, you know, or go take your microwave thing to your friends and just put it in the microwave while they're all sitting there having a nice dinner? Like, what is going to make you happier here? And like, yeah, you might not see changes in the scales this week because you had 4 birthdays this weekend, but really, like, when you're laying on your deathbed, like, what is it that you want to remember?
And again, your scale weight isn't going to be on your tombstone, you know?
No.
Tyson, 67 kilos. You're like, oh yeah, that's what people are going to remind me of. Like, and I think this comes back to, you know, the value you provide in the world. People don't give a shit whether you're 64 kilos, 65 kilos, whatever you are, you know? If you wake up 2 kilos heavier, I'm not going to be like, oh, fucking hell, Ellen, I see you're heavier today. Like, what's going on there? No, like,
we can no longer be friends. You're too fat.
Exactly. No, we're catching up for coffee. You make me laugh. We're good friends. You know, like you provide your friends and your family, like your friends and family are friends with you, and, you know, they love you because of who you are as a person, not what your weight represents on a scale.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting to see that you're so passionate about all of these other things as well, because I think that there's a lot of good and bad coaches everywhere, but I feel like there's a lot of male coaches who're very pushy on like the scales, the measurements, the macro, like the bro science, and it's just very like they don't really take any of the other stuff into account. So it's nice to see that like you're understanding like how a female's body is working and everything else that goes. It's not just about the food; it's about like how we feel about the food and how we're thinking before and after we eat and when we're eating. And it's not as easy as just eat a little bit less, like just be in a calorie deficit. Like, was that easy? Fuck.
Yeah, I know, right? Like, obviously it's calorie deficit, but it's like, okay, all right, thank you for telling me about being in a calorie deficit. I'll go and do that from now on. I'll just be in a calorie deficit. Yeah. Like, it is such a, like, you know, male, very logical, you know, very numbers driven and stuff like that. So that's why, like you said, a lot of them are just, what are your measurements? What are your numbers? What are this? And it's like, man, we just can't, it's not black and white. It's not that easy.
No, it really isn't. So anyone who follows your Instagram page, I would probably say that they think you're pretty outspoken.
Oh yes, definitely.
You're not afraid to call it out. Like, it cracks me up so much when you get like a spam or account or like someone who's bought all their followers and they want to do like your social media marketing and stuff like that, and you just like post it, and I'm like, I hate confrontations. I would never really do that. I'm too much of a pussy, but it cracks me up when you do it.
That's what I'm for, you know. Yeah. I'm here for the confrontation.
Have you always been this outspoken?
I don't think so. I don't know. like I not in high school or anything like that. Like, I don't know why or when it kind of started, but I think it was after, like, I think it was after actually coming out of my eating disorder and then just gaining some confidence in myself, like, it was really weird. Like, there was just a point in time where I just had some self-confidence about me after gaining the weight and, overcoming these issues where I kind of just didn't give a fuck about anything, like, again, people like me for who I am. And if they didn't like me, and then I just do things where it's like, oh, this, like, people, like, I used to, I read this self-development book about you should try and do one uncomfortable thing every day, always go outside of your comfort zone. And I think I just took that really seriously and just started doing a lot of things that were outside of my comfort zone. And, like, with me, I'm always recording on my phone and stuff like that. Yeah. And so I'll record in the street, I'll record in front of people, I'll do things where, like, because at the end of the day, like, you've got to be who you are, as long as you're not hurting anyone, as long as you're not, causing anyone issues. And so for me, I'm like, I just tell it like it is. And a lot of people don't like that, and that's absolutely fine, but it's who I am. And yeah, I guess I'm allowing myself to be myself,
So how did you stop caring what other people thought of you then?
That is a great question. Like, and again, it's not like I don't care about what anyone thinks about me ever. Like, there's definitely times where I still find myself getting, thoughts of like, oh, fuck, like, what do they say? And then this is actually when I find, for me, it's that time to push myself and go outside of that comfort zone, I think it was just allowing myself to slowly let me be me, and whether that was something I thought and would just say what was on my mind, or again, learning to be okay of just doing something a little bit more uncomfortable every day until I got to the point where I'm like, this is normal. And I actually came to when I started learning to record myself. So I used to, like, people think I'm just naturally on camera, where I'm so scared to talk on camera. So every day I used to record myself, but I wouldn't put it anywhere. I'd just talk to the camera and practice that. And then when I finally got confident enough, I'd put it on Facebook or Instagram. And people forget, like, I used to have like 10 followers, so no one really watched it. So no, and I would think, oh, everyone's going to judge me, everyone's going to think, like 5 people would watch the story, and that was it. Yeah. And then I think it was just that, and I also started realizing that no one else really cares either, type of thing. Yep. Like, because we're the center of our universe, we think everyone's going to care about one thing, like, oh, I've got this zit on my face, man, everyone's going to notice it. No one notices it. Everyone's got their own things going on. Everyone's always focused on themselves. But I think it was just coming to that understanding that everyone just cares about themselves at the end of the day. And they don't really, like, you may think it's the end of the world or everything's about you, but it's not. Everything's about themselves at the end of the day. So I think it was just overcoming that over time. And then when I was recording in the gym, I used to record like how-to videos and stuff like that. And I remember other PTs, like, I used to think, oh, they're going to judge me, or people are going to watch me. And people would kind of look over, and that would be it. Like, that was it, No one ever said anything to me. And, like, again, I was making these stories up in my head about this person's going to judge me, or they're going to say this. And, like, I was just making these things up in my head. So I guess overcoming that by just doing it and learning to be okay being uncomfortable.
Yeah, 100%. And I really do think that the building that confidence and learning to be uncomfortable, it's a skill, like going to the gym and building a muscle and learning to, like, once you kind of build that uncomfortableness muscle, it gets easier, and then you feel less uncomfortable, and then you take it to the next step and you do something else that's uncomfortable. And the more you practice it, the less scary it's going to be.
Yeah. And like, the thing is, you start small. Like, I always say, like, it's not about, oh, I went from this to this overnight. Like, no, it's like, every day, if we do a little bit, like just a tiny step, it may not seem like much, but give it a year, give it 2 years, give it 5 years, you're a totally different person.
Yeah, 100%. So it's been so nice chatting to you. I just looked at the time and see we almost got for an hour. Time goes fast, far out. Yeah, right. But what's the plan for the future? Do you have any exciting things coming up? Like, what are you taking your business?
So I think, I think, like, business-wise, I just want to keep doing exactly what I'm doing. Like, for me, it's about expanding and reaching more people. Like, I just want to be able to get as much help as I can out there to people. So however I can go about doing that is what I'm kind of planning on. Yep. I love what I do, and I never want to change what I'll do. I would love to just, like I just feel like I'm going to do this till the day I die, basically, like just because it's fun and I love it. So that's that. Personal life, I'd like to go a bit more traveling next year. So maybe I'll do, online coaching does allow me to do that. So I would like to do a bit of a Europe trip for a while, I think, which I think I've never been to Europe. So that'll be fun. So, keep an eye out for that in 2023. But yeah, that's about as exciting as it'll get.
Very exciting, very exciting. Do you have anything that you want to plug? Like, this is your chance. If there's any new projects coming up?
Just if you guys just want to follow me on Instagram at Tyson the Trainer with 2 R's. Again, I'm not everyone's cup of tea, but if you like someone who's outspoken, tells it like it is, and like I said, no BS, like I'll tell you guys the facts, and that's all it's going to be. So, everything's basically on my Instagram, so you guys can just go there to find me.
Yeah, literally. Well, thank you so much for jumping on again. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and it's been so much fun and so interesting, just to kind of get like a guy's point of view of all of these things. Because I think for me, I have these conversations like daily with females, and even though we're all different people, we all have gone through very similar experiences growing up. So we all have like we have a lot of shared values. So it's really nice to see that guys like that you also have gone through these things, and that we all like you also have these same struggle with insecurities and thinking about what other people think. And like at the end of the day, we're all human and we're all going to have the same issues. But sometimes we just forget about that.
Yeah, we're not all special snowflakes. We're all basically the same. That's the thing.
Yeah, literally. All right, guys. Well, if you like this podcast, please make sure to take a screenshot, tag myself, tag Tyson, tag Women's Fitness Academy Australia, and let us know what you think, because we love connecting with you. So thank you so much for listening again, and everyone just have a most amazing day. Bye.
Thanks.